Ladies and gentlemen, this interview is brought to you by www.employeeescapeplan.com. And if you want to have more customers pay you more money more often, you're looking to get those foundational marketing, sales, and business principles in place so that you can have a solid foundation so your business doesn't crumple as you scale, or you want to just scale and make more money, get past the six-figure mark, and grow. I highly recommend Joe Nicasio. He's an amazing guy, works with all kinds of different businesses, and has been mentored by great people. Jay Abraham, who's a marketing genius. I think he's invested over 25,000 hours into his marketing and business experience, and he's an advisor for Burn It Up Coaching and becoming your greatest possible self. So I highly recommend Joe Nicasio. Again, that's www.employeeescapeplan.com. Sarah Lenzini works full-time as an aerospace engineer and is also a certified assertiveness coach for women. Her business is called The Assertive Woman, and her mission is to empower women to confidently express their truth so they can have happier and more intentional relationships. During her childhood, she was conditioned to be a passive, shy doormat due to verbal and emotional abuse, and didn't know what was and was not okay treatment for others as she grew up. She started to pursue and choose unhealthy, abusive partners to date and truly embodied the quote, "We accept the love we think we deserve." It wasn't until she finally had enough tears and unhealthy relationships that she took action to start looking deeper and heal herself and her self-esteem from the inside out. Things started to click for her over time, and she transformed into the assertive woman she is today, and is passionate about sharing her story with others and the mindset shifts and skills she learned along the way. Sarah, you ready to rock this?
I'm ready.
She is ready. Okay, we're going. You are now live on Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. This is awesome. Best day ever.
Best day ever. It's spreading. It's contagious.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you for coming on and giving our audience the insight on how to be more assertive, how to have our boundaries and love ourselves more. Thank you for taking the time to do that for us.
Thank you for having me on. This is great. I love what you do and can't wait to share.
Yes. So we're going to dive right into the theme of today, which is self-love through forgiveness. And Sarah, we want to know, how has that showed up for you about being assertive? How have you had to learn how to forgive yourself? How have you really dealt with this concept?
Yeah. So when I saw your flyer this morning, I was actually pretty excited about your theme today, about forgiveness and how to get there through self-love. And the mindset shift that I had around that was when I read the book Rising Strong by Brené Brown. She's like one of my favorite authors of all time. She talks about shame, vulnerability, and how to overcome those things. And the self-love part of it and the grace and the forgiveness that you need to show yourself, the way that she embodied that was by saying, we're only doing the best we can. And we're all doing the best that we can. And one of her favorite inspiring authors as well is Maya Angelou. And Maya Angelou also said, when you know better, you do better.
Yes.
And so those two quotes, like, we're all doing the best we can. Let's all just, try and forgive ourselves, be flexible with ourselves. We're really only doing the best we can. But at the same time, don't use that as, oh, I'm just doing the best I can, can't do anything better. It's like really to use that to kind of push yourself forward, because once you know better, you do better. And when you do better, you start to feel better. So it's really that whole encompassing idea around that. And so, because before I was pretty hard on myself and, didn't show myself a lot of self-love. And it wasn't until I was like, hey, we're all going through this together. I'm not alone in this. We're all just doing the best we can, and just keep pushing forward, keep growing. And once you know better, you'll do better. And so that really helped me a lot.
Wow, that's beautiful. And what I hear is like this kind of light at the end of the tunnel, you know, and to not beat ourselves up when we're not performing or when things aren't going the way that we want them to. And I know you have some own experiences that you had to deal with and grapple with about your self-worth and self-image and what you believed you deserved. So I love that something within you, within your soul, kept pulling you forward. There was this, I know I'm meant for more. I know that there's better. So just keep going, Sarah. Keep going, and eventually you'll get there and manifest this amazing life with amazing relationships and partners.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And I kind of have that healthy pursuit of excellence. You know, like I kind of struggled with perfectionist for a little while and trying to do everything right and correct and be the good girl and you know, just do that. And then I was like, and then it's not really about being perfect anymore. It's about striving for excellence. Just keep growing. Like, being perfect isn't real. And so it's kind of like a mindset thing of like trying to reach something that doesn't actually exist. And so, but really just growing and pushing forward and being resilient. That's one of my favorite words, is resilient.
Wow. I love it. And I also hear that in every moment there's an opportunity to grow, to be better, and to have like some kind of improvement. And if we're constantly seeking that and looking for that awareness, then we can achieve that, then we can succeed with that. So Sarah, let's dive into a little bit more of what is the assertiveness coach. What is that all about, and how did you create the Assertive Woman? And tell us more about what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I love that. So in my intro, I said I'm an aerospace engineer by day, which I'm on my lunch break, so this is awesome. So I do aerospace engineering by day, and the assertiveness coaching stuff kind of came around. It's been a long time coming, to be honest. And it really started when, my childhood was, I said like kind of was conditioned to be a people pleaser, to try and be perfect, to try and be the good girl. And the assertiveness stuff, picking the relationships that aren't good for you and just relationship after relationship where, like I said, you pick the people, or we teach people how to treat us and we accept the love we think we deserve. And so I was picking people over time that would hurt me in similar ways that I was hurt in my past, or picking people that weren't great for me, but I was actively choosing them like subconsciously. And then it wasn't until like just so painful. I just like fell to the floor in tears again and was like, what am I doing? And this is not okay. Like, there's so much more healthy relationships that I can have. And this is like, I just was like, okay, I consciously had that thought of like, I'm done with this. What do I need to do? And so I got into therapy, and that was when stuff really started to click for me. Just really realizing, kind of connecting the dots, because the way our psyches work is that we kind of try and fix the hurt that we had in our past in the present moment. And that's why we surround ourselves with people that we think can fix our hurts from the past. But they're usually not the right people that can do that. And so that's kind of what I was doing, was that I was trying to fix my hurts from the past in the present with people that were just not actually capable of doing that. And so really just getting into therapy and having like reading tons of books, just really diving in of like, okay, what am I doing? Because I came from it, like I've always been introspective. I came to it from the place of like, what am I doing? What can I do differently? I know this isn't okay. And that's really just where that came from. So transformation that I had, going from, dealing with like trauma and abuse and abandonment in their past, and connecting the dots to today. Like, what is going on in your life today that either was shaped by the past or just has been kind of ingrained in a habit. And so what I help women do is really look at that, and then specifically tell them ways in which to like communicate more directly, more clearly, look at their behavior of saying like, what, like when you hear people say like, oh, she made me do this or he made me do that. It's like, no, like you chose to do that based on whatever the circumstances were. And so I help people take responsibility for their part in every interaction.
I love that.
There's always like a choice, and you always there's always two people in any situation, any interaction, and you can choose how you respond or how you react to that situation. And one thing you can't really control is how you feel. So, but there's a huge, like, you can't control how you feel in the moment, but you can control how you respond to those feelings. And so really what I help women do is really just have all these understandings, give them clarity, and then also empower them with specific tools of like how to set boundaries and how to say no. Because you can't learn how to say no and set boundaries when you don't have that foundation of the understanding of why you need to do those things in the first place, and that you feel worthy of doing that. Like the worthiness and feeling good enough to take care of yourself, and that you deserve to take care of yourself, and that you deserve to be treated well by others. Like that's a very internal thing that no one can do that for you. And so you really have to believe that in your heart of hearts, that you're worthy of deserving good treatment. And that's kind of where I was, is I did not feel that I deserved good treatment, or that I, to be honest, I didn't even know what was and what was not okay treatment. Like it was kind of like, it just was. Yeah. So in a nutshell.
I love that. What you said, like you can't set boundaries until you know why you need to set them, and that you have the self-belief and self-worth to set them, right? It's like to know your self-worth. It's like, oh wait, that's right. I am worth something. I am doing something. My time is valuable. So I will set these boundaries, because it is unacceptable for me to continue to allow this, trespassing on my values, on my time, on who I'm committed to being in this life and how I'm committed to feeling.
Exactly. And a lot of times, like for me at least, I didn't know what my values were. I didn't know what I deserved. I didn't know any of those things, because like I felt like I was like a people-pleasing kind of chameleon. Like I would kind of shape who I was to match what other people expected, or how other people kind of wanted to mold me. Or I didn't really learn I didn't figure out who I was until like my mid-20s, right. And so it's definitely a more empowering feeling to be like, okay, no, these are my values. My time is valuable. I'm important. What I say matters. How I feel matters. And it took a while to learn that, to be honest. So
yeah, what would you say is the fastest way to learn those like that knowledge, to like get that self-belief, that self-work? Like how do we like inject ourselves, with some self-worth?
I know, $1 million question. And I'll say that stuff, that does not happen overnight, let me tell you. I mean, growing self-esteem and growing self-confidence and believing that you're worthy, if you don't already come from that place, that doesn't happen overnight. But what really helped me was, of course, therapy. And I just read a lot of books. Like Brene Brown, she really hits the nail on the head when she talks about shame, because that's really what the feeling of unworthiness is shame. Like you feel, which is also different than guilt. So to kind of go off on a little quick tangent about,
let's go.
So shame is very different than guilt. Those are two very different emotions. And like, I don't think I ever really knew the difference between those two, but just in a nutshell, guilt is when you think to yourself, I did something bad. Like I made a mistake. I feel badly about that. But you can make it up. You can go to that person and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That's what guilt feels like. Whereas shame feels like, on the other hand, that's more deep at the core. That's like you're saying to yourself, I am bad. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. And shame, like that, you can't go to someone and say, I'm sorry, and make that all better. Like shame is it's a very insidious like feeling and emotion, and it can like wreck your whole life. Like shame is one of those things where it's like, okay, we all need to heal from that. And so Brene Brown, her books are incredible. She talks a lot about shame and just really like owning your vulnerability and just opening up to connection. And also like my feelings of not being good enough and worthy came from like childhood patterns and trauma. And so I really dove into therapy and really learning what I was doing and how those behaviors and how those interactions and situation impacted me, and not that I was a victim of it, but that it was my responsibility to then see those situations for what they were, realizing how they were impacting me, and then also taking responsibility to do the healing through therapy and books, and just surrounding yourself with positive people that don't continue to hurt you in that way. And also taking steps to push away like other people or the people that do hurt you, and just learn to like make that line in the sand and say like, okay, this isn't okay anymore. Because then when you start to do that, that's like showing yourself that you're worthy. When you take actions to like protect yourself and to express how other people make you feel, that will make you feel stronger self-esteem, because stronger self-esteem is built by taking esteemable acts, which is kind of an interesting thing to say, but like you build your self-esteem by pushing the people away that hurt you, by expressing how you feel when they do, by setting that boundary. And so it's really two things, long story short, two things. Really think about how like how the messages of shame and unworthiness is impacting your life, and then two, taking the steps with action to remedy that.
Wow.
So
it's powerful. Yeah. That's powerful. I love that distinction though. The difference between shame and guilt is one is like an identity level, and one is like, hey, you know, I did this activity or action wrong, or it didn't work, or whatever. So let's dive a little bit into forgiveness and how forgiveness shows up in being able to adapt to those and being able to transcend through those or overcome those feelings. How have you noticed that happens?
Yeah. So there's two things I think when you talk about forgiveness. And so I think one would be forgiving yourself, and then also forgiving others around you. Right? I mean, which I know the theme is self-love or forgiveness. But I would love to go into like forgiving others around you as well.
Let's do it.
Because I think that that is kind of a huge thing for being assertive in relationships. So I kind of touched on the self-love for assertiveness for yourself earlier. So for forgiveness for others, the way I see it is that I feel like forgiveness is earned in a way, which isn't really, that's not a very popular opinion for women or for society in general, is that, oh, you know, forgiveness is about you and you choose to forgive them, and just to have a I don't know, you feel better about that, which is totally fine. But at the same time, like you can forgive someone and not want to have them in your life. Or you can forgive someone and still choose to not interact. It's I don't know if that makes sense, but like you can.
It does. It's the boundaries. Like, it's you can forgive someone and still maintain your boundaries. And there's all these different levels of interaction and boundaries that we can have with people. We can say, you don't belong in my life. Your values are not resonant with me. So I forgive you and I love you, and you're not in my life. Thank you for being in my life for however long you were. And we can say, hey, you know, I forgive you, and you're more someone who I'm going to talk to like every couple months, but not really someone I want to have in my life more frequently than that, just because of our values, because of who we are, kind of thing. And then you can go, you know, shorter and shorter until you have someone in your life every day and you have to forgive them as well.
Yeah, and I feel like there's no shame in that.
Right.
Like there shouldn't be any shame in just telling someone like, hey, like, you know, you hurt me in this situation, or over time, like if someone really doesn't respond to your boundaries well, and you tell them that they hurt you and what you prefer for them to do next time, and they continue to do it, you're like, okay, thank you for showing me how you really feel about the situation. Thank you for showing, like, it's not something to be upset about. It's like, okay, this is another data point that I have about this person. And really just kind of looking at it objectively.
I love it. Data point. You're an engineer.
I just talk about engineering. Like, I feel like I do kind of see it in that, like, now I see it kind of black and white like that, but I know that relationships are very complex. And I totally get that. And at the same time, if you have to repeatedly tell someone like that their behavior hurts you and they continue to do it, I'm like, okay, like that's not okay. And so there's actually 4 things that I really look for in relationships. If someone like to forgive someone, and at the same time, like you can forgive people however you choose to forgive people. But for me, if there's someone that has done something that hurts me repeatedly or has done something very painful, there's kind of 4 things that I look for in order to assess whether I'd want to spend more time with them or allow them into my life. And I got this from one of my other huge inspirations. Her name is Dr. Jen. She's incredible. She's actually a therapist that had an online radio show, and she also had TV shows on VH1. And anyone that knows me knows that I freaking love Dr. Jen so much. She changed my life. And her shows on VH1 are called Couples Therapy and Family Therapy. Anyway, so I got this forgiveness kind of stuff from her where she says, you look for the 4 R's of apology. So the 4 R's would be, like, let's say someone makes a mistake and causes you a lot of pain. So and you might have to like tell this to them, be like, hey, this is what I'm looking for from you to feel better about our relationship. So the first R would be remorse. Like if that person is showing genuine remorse for hurting you, like where it's like a genuine feeling, they feel bad about causing you pain, that would be the first thing. 2 is accepting responsibility. If they're accepting responsibility for what they did that caused you that pain, that's great. I mean, they're not responsible for your feelings, let's say, like we have our own responsibility to our own feelings, but their interaction in the relationship, are they taking responsibility for their side of the street? Like, are they taking responsibility? They're not blaming you. They're not like getting defensive. Like they're legitimately taking responsibility for their part. 3 would be how to repair the relationship, for them to come and say, hey, like I messed up. What can I do to make this better for you? And then the 4th thing would be avoid repeating this behavior. And this is a big one. They'll come to you and say something like, this is what I'm doing to change my behavior, to change my actions, to avoid repeating this behavior that has hurt you in the past so much. And if someone gives me those 4 R's, I'm like, sold. Like, that's awesome. Like, thank you so much. Like, that just makes me trust that person so much more. And it's huge. Like, if they don't, because in my past I had a lot of stuff where like people just like continually do things where like, they would apologize, but then nothing would really change long term. And so I'm like, the 4 R's, that is gold. Love that. So that's kind of how I assess whether a hurtful person should really, if I choose to have them in my life, those are the kinds of things that I would really look for. Those 4 R's.
I love it. I love it. So I'm curious about the repair relationship stage. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean to repair the relationship?
Yeah. So that is definitely something that's personal for each person. But so let's say, for example, let's use the example of if you're in a relationship with someone and they, I don't know, let's say they were just like texting another girl or something like that, which totally a no-no, but like, let's just say they use that as a hypothetical example. And then they would say, how can I repair the relationship? Because obviously the trust there has been broken. And I think that's what happens a lot of times is the trust is broken. And so the way to repair it would be to rebuild that trust and connection with that person. And so what they could do is to take actions to, in that example, I don't know, maybe like block the girl's number or say something like, hey, I'll let you see my phone for the next, however long, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Like, how can I make this up to you? And that's really personal for each person. But it's really just how to rebuild that trust. What do you need to see to have that trust rebuilt? And for me, it would be consistent good behavior over time is really how you build trust. And so it would have to be something like that. Like, you can't repair a relationship overnight, just like you can't build your self-esteem overnight. Like, it has to be consistent, good behavior over time, I think.
I love this. This is great. So again, the 4 R's. Katie asked, "What are the 4 R's?" Again, I wrote it in, but it's remorse, accepting responsibility, repairing the relationship, and then avoiding repeating. Right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Just wanted to confirm I got those. And then this is similar to Landmark. I don't know if you've heard of Landmark or been to it, but basically they talk a lot about integrity. And you say how you restore integrity with someone, which is trust, which is like workability in the relationship, is you acknowledge the broken agreement. Like, I had a promise to not be on the phone with other women, whatever it is, and I broke that promise. And the impact, you can share the impact on me is, and how that affects the workability of the relationship. And then the impact on you is and then the new promise, right? So you get to the impact. What's the cost? How does that break down integrity and trust and workability in the relationship? And then you make a new promise for what they can count on you for moving forward. So it's kind of similar to this, where the repair the relationship is like, accept responsibility. Here's the impact. I accept responsibility, and here's what it did for us. I see that doesn't work for us. And then repairing the relationship is probably also a little bit of acknowledging what didn't work about that in there, and then saying, and here's what I'm going to make sure that I do from now on.
Yeah, that's good. And I have not been to Landmark, but I have heard a little bit about it.
It's awesome.
But yeah, that sounds a very similar kind of thing. Is like, and I like how you said, like, here's the impact. Here's the what I did. I'm accepting responsibility for it, and I see how it's impacted you in the following ways. Because people just want to feel heard. People just want to be understood. That's really, like, especially women. Like, we just want to know that we matter and that you're hearing us.
Yeah. 100%. So I am curious, when this comes up, boundaries, especially the topic of boundaries, and especially for women, I can imagine that there's women who probably are afraid of being too assertive and too boundary driven. So how do you find that balance? And for those women who are afraid of that, of being too assertive, cutting people out immediately, I would say that probably doesn't happen as often, because women are typically more empathetic, and it's like, no, but I just want it to work. Oh, but it can work. It can work. Versus, all right, one shot, you're done, you're out, I'm moving on. I think that's more of like a masculine kind of ruthlessness. So I'm curious, how does that work for you in assertiveness?
Yeah, definitely. And that's really funny, because I feel like men probably do kind of a lot of times, like, have that more like line in the sand, one and done kind of thing. But so I've kind of been noticing in my own life that there's a time and place for being assertive. And you, like, for me, like, you don't need to be assertive in every single situation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, there's a time and place, and it really depends on how much value you place on whatever it is that you're wanting to be assertive about. So, for example, let's say, like, if you have, like, a friend who is repeatedly 15 minutes late to your dinner dates, or just something small where, like, you're like, okay, she's kind of late. I kind of just know this about her. Maybe I'll just, read a book for 15 minutes, or be like, hey, I'm heading over now. See you there. Just to, like, and, like, you don't need to be like, hey, I'm going to set a boundary, and if you're not there by 6:05, I'm going to walk out, because I need to teach you how to treat me. Like, it's kind of like, you got to use your judgments a little bit on that kind of stuff. And so that would be a situation which I would, like, say, like, hey, like, like I said, try and be like, hey, I'm heading over now, see you there soon, or something like that. But at the same time, there's also a situation where, like, I actually just read, I was reading an article on Reddit. I actually don't use Reddit, but I just happened to, like, go on Reddit and search assertiveness. And there was this comment from this girl, and she was talking about Airbnb and how she had a guest at her Airbnb that was, like, creepy. Like, he came in without his luggage and brought, like, this huge handle of alcohol, and was like, hey, like, let's sit on the couch and just talk, and, like, hey, let's open this drink. And he like didn't have any of his luggage, and she was like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, and so it's important to really listen to your gut feeling in that moment. Like if something feels creepy or off, or like you don't feel safe, that is 100% okay to be assertive in that moment. And so it really depends on the situation. And that's the kind of thing is that she was saying in this Reddit article that that she like kind of went along with the whole thing. Like they went out to dinner, they got a movie, they sat on the couch, and he like ended up massaging her feet. Like it was, and she was like, oh my God, like it felt so weird. I wanted him to stop the whole time, like, but I couldn't. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so like scary. Like that would be terrifying to be in that situation. And that is the moment where you're like, where if he comes in without luggage and wants to sit down, right off the bat, be like, hey, no, like, or I don't know, say something like, hey, no, you know, we're just renting out a room for you to stay. We're not interested in having chit chat or going to dinner or watching a movie with you. And it's okay to say that, because if you feel creeped out by something, or you could even say, hey, like, we'll give you your money back. We're not feeling very comfortable right now. We're going to have to ask you to leave our home. And so that is a moment when you're like, okay, you need to be assertive in these moments. And so there's a fine line. It's definitely a judgment call. Trust your gut feeling. And if you feel unsafe for any reason, like, do not dismiss that. Don't let like the society norms of like trying to be the nice person, trying to always be accommodating. Please don't let that get in the way of your personal safety. Like her life could have been on the line. Like you don't know, like that was a creepy situation. Like she should have been more assertive in that situation.
Yeah.
So
what do you think she was afraid of, and how can we empower especially the women who are listening right now, to not be afraid to get past that fear and step into their power confidently, consistently, whenever they need to? Yeah.
I think she was afraid of just having that label of being bitchy. Or, you know, it's like that's women, we really struggle with that label of being bitchy or bossy. And you see it in the workplace a lot. And I don't do assertiveness really corporate training at all. I really focus on assertiveness in your personal relationships. But still, like, there is that gender difference where women are more typically, people expect them to be the nice girl, to not be bitchy, to not be bossy, to be accommodating. And really, it's like, we need to cut through all that, because that is not okay. Like, I don't really know how else to really describe it, but it's like literally just a social norm that needs to go away. And the more that we can like step into that and really just own our power and be like, no, you are worthy of saying no. It's okay to say no. No is a complete sentence. Like, I give you permission to do these things. Like, you don't need permission to do these things, but like, if that was something that was holding you back, like, you can still be a nice person and say no. You can still be kind and a great friend and a great mother and a great parent, and you can still say no. It's like, it's one of those things where we think it has to be like either or, like either I'm nice or I say no and I'm not. And it's really like, there's a gray area. Like, it's, you can be both and that's really, I think, where it comes from, is that really just stepping into that and being like, no, this is okay. I can be a good person. I think it's really the label and how we see ourselves and our identity that really prevents us from doing that. And the fear, that's the underlying emotion here, is always fear. So if we can see ourselves as a nice person, a kind person, a great friend, and still take care of ourselves by saying no or by setting boundaries, that's really where it comes from. We need to see us and our identity is like both and. If that makes sense.
That's powerful. Yeah, I love that it's at an identity level, meaning it is who we are, is a kind, compassionate, accommodating person, yet we're not afraid to say no, and we don't rely on the circumstances to dictate, like, that's who we are. We know it. We have that self-worth. We have that self-love. And especially women out there, you have an opportunity to reinforce that and step into that right now. Sarah's giving you permission to be that now, to know yourself as that now. Not that you needed it, and maybe you have some work to do. Maybe you have some growth to do in the area of standing up for yourself, standing up for your boundaries. And I love that we're taking on this conversation right now, because it's definitely needed, Sarah.
This is huge. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of women put themselves into scary situations where because of that fear, because they want to be nice, and like where it can really affect your personal safety. And that's like, okay, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah, I totally get that. So in terms of breaking through the fear, we talked a little bit about that. Is there any other like really powerful exercises or things that you can give our audience, especially the women, who can get into that place of I'm like an alpha kind of, like I'm going to take control and be assertive and maintain my boundaries? Is there any other like practices or disciplines that you'd recommend to be able to step into that power more easily, more smoothly, more unconsciously, automatically?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think this kind of comes down to like self-talk as well. And kind of just, coming down to self-talk and putting yourself, like sitting tall, shoulders back, like really just putting your body first into like a powerful position, like head up, back straight, shoulders back. I like already, like I was kind of slunched over and I just went like this, and I'm like, I feel really powerful right now. It's funny how that works. Yeah. But yeah, I think just definitely like, and don't wait to feel not afraid. Like, feel the fear and do it anyways is another one of my favorite quotes.
Yes.
For Dr. Jen. Like, we're never going to feel ready or unafraid or fully prepared to step into that new identity. And so really just pushing through and having that self-talk of like, yes, I'm afraid of this right now, and it still needs to happen, and I still am going to do this, and it's okay for me to do this, and I'm worthy of this, and I'm afraid. And really just owning it and being like, I feel afraid, but I'm going to do it anyways, and it's going to be okay. I'm probably going to feel really happy about it, and it'll be fine. It'll be okay.
So do you think courage is missing from most women?
I think in certain situations, yes. 1 second. Sure. Cat problems.
Love it.
Okay, so courage missing from
being able to be assertive, unconsciously stepping into those challenging, kind of fearful situations. Yes,
I do. And I think, so courage, that's an interesting word. I think that probably can be, I don't know how really to define courage, but I think that is kind of what I just talked about, was feeling the fear and doing it anyway, having that courage just to kind of push through, and you're still afraid. Like when I think of courage, I think of like infantry in the army or something, where they're probably still terrified, but they're pushing through and they're getting it done, and they're able to still act based on their feelings. And so I think, that's a good question.
Yeah. It's something interesting to look at, because I know I asked the question, and when you said, that's interesting, kind of what is courage really? And I think a lot of people are waiting for the courage to come along to feel courageous, the moment to feel courageous, when really what's needed is just to take the action that you know to do, and not like think about it, and just know that you're right, I deserve this, I'm taking the action. And it's more about action, just action, what you know to do, versus waiting around till you feel like, ooh, it's the right time, now I feel courageous, oh, I got to get more courageous, then go ask. It's like, no, like say you wanted to ask for a raise or something for your job, like you don't have to build up courage to do that. You might want to like psych yourself up and get excited about the possibility and empower yourself, have a chat with Sarah so she can pump you up and get you all excited about the going and asking and let you know how assertive and powerful and badass you are. And like, you don't need to necessarily do that. What's really needed is just go take the action, because I think a lot of people are waiting for that perfect moment, and then the perfect moment passes them by.
Yeah, and also too, it's kind of like a where it's like courage begets courage. Like the more you take action,
yes,
the higher confidence you'll have.
Yes,
which will then inspire you to take more action and be more courageous in the future. So it's really a great cycle, or I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but it's like courage begets courage. Like the more you act courageously and confidently, the more you will want to act that way in the future, and you'll feel more courageous after that. Yeah. And so it really is just a really good like cycle. And so that's why like we get stuck initially trying to, like you said, wait until we feel courageous to do it. And it's like, no, because once you get over that hump, then you'll feel a lot better and you'll feel empowered. And like, I mean, it's happened to me. It's probably happened to you, where you're like, you're writing something and you're like sweating it, and then you're like, you just go do it, and you're like, wow, that wasn't as bad. Or like, wow, that really sucked, and I was like terrified. But now I feel better. I know what to expect for next time, or like, it'll be fine. It was great.
Yeah, well, I think it's a common tendency for a lot of people around the world to wait their entire lives to take that leap, to take that courageous action, to just go for their dreams. And at the end of their life, they're looking back saying, damn, why didn't I go sooner? Or they have regrets or whatever it might be. And assertiveness sounds as well about not having those regrets, not being stuck with those, well, I wish I would have, or what if I had done it differently. So I just really want to acknowledge that. And also we have Nicole Amos, who says hiya, and Alexandra Herrera, who says, hi Sarah, that's my bestie, so proud of you.
Thanks, girl. Alex. Yeah, I was like sharing this around. I was like, I'm going live at 12.
I love it.
Yeah. For tuning in, guys.
Awesome. So we talked about a couple different strategies to just get into action and be courageous. And really, it's not so much about the being courageous, but just taking the action that you know to take. Any other final points that you really want our audience to receive about being assertive that you feel would make a difference for them?
Yeah, definitely. So assertiveness, the way I really see it is I realize that's kind of a word that has a connotation for being forceful, really kind of like shoving it down people's throats. And I really want to explain how I see it, and that it's not like I said earlier, there's kind of a time and place. You don't have to be assertive at all times. It's really just use your judgment and see in what situations to be more assertive. And I also see it as just like not being disrespectful. I see assertiveness as having respect, using kindness when you can, and at the same time, you're being firm. You're not being disrespectful. You're not being mean, rude, bossy, but you're saying, hey, this is how I feel. And of course, like I always recommend women to use I statements. Like, you're taking responsibility for yourself. Assertiveness is really about yourself. It's not about controlling other people. It's not about manipulating them to get them to do what you want them to do. It's really about you. And like we teach people how to treat us. Assertiveness is about you. If you don't like the way that they're treating you, come to it from an I statement saying, I feel frustrated, irritated, hurt, afraid, abandoned. Like there's a lot of different emotion words in there that, to be honest, when I first kind of like was starting to learn all this, I didn't even know how I was feeling. So that's like the bare foundation of assertiveness, is to know how you're feeling. Number one, that will help. And two, to have that like strong self-care to really feel that you're worthy of being taken care of by yourself and by others. So come at it from like, I feel blank when you do whatever it is. And what I would prefer to have happen between us, to have a happier, healthier relationship, is if you can not speak to me in that way with that tone of voice. Be very clear. Like, one of my biggest pet peeves is passive aggressiveness, because I was passive aggressive. My family was passive aggressive. Like, it was just like very, where you kind of like, and what is passive aggressive? It's using jokes It's like using hints, using sarcasm, using like backhanded compliments, which is like passive aggressiveness will erode any relationship quick. And like, that's kind of, it's like a very toxic behavior. And so really assertiveness is really just not doing any of that and using I feel blank and just being able to get that out without using hints or without, because really passive aggressive is like you're angry about something. Like that's really all it is. You're angry about something, but you're not expressing it in a clear and direct way. And so that's what I really like. You know, my job is done if you can say, if you can feel angry and say, I feel angry because blank. That is just what I love. And so, I'm
going to pause you real quick. This is gold. Okay. This is gold. Everyone who's listening, if you feel like you have some room for improvement, or you just want to be more courageous, you want to be more assertive, you want people around you to get your communication and how you're feeling more, think about what you're going to go say after this interview. What is that I feel blank because blank? What is that one thing? Just think of one thing that you can go say. You know, who is that one person that you can go share that with? You know, for me, for example, I could say, to my business partner, I feel disconnected because we are kind of on a different page sometimes, right? And I kind of do feel like that because we're busy and doing our own things. But if I express that, then he has an opportunity to hear it and get that and actually do something about it.
Yeah, and you're not putting them on the defense. Like the goal is not to control or manipulate them, but to share how you're feeling in an effort to clear the air and really make that relationship better and stronger, and really just open a respectful dialogue. Because if you come to someone and say, I feel blank, they're not going to be really on the defensive, depending on who or what it's about. They're going to be like, okay, Chris feels disconnected. Let's find out why. Or like, oh, why, Chris? Like, let's chat about that. And you're just opening up a healthy, conscious, direct, clear dialogue instead of beating around the bush or whatever else people do, like beat around the bush, make jokes, hint around, like stonewall and just ignore people. Like, the list goes on. But
have you found that people say, I feel you are da-da-da-da-da-da, and that like puts them on the defense? Like, does it have to be my emotion and because, and then try to keep it about me because it's probably like more eyes, the more eyes you can use, the better versus, I feel you are da-da-da because you da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. And that's definitely something to watch out for too, because just really try and say something in which they're not going to get defensive about. And again, their defensiveness is their emotion. They have to own it. But at the same time, like, we all influence each other. They're influencing you and you feel a certain way when they do things, and then you'll do things and they'll feel a certain way when you do things. So it's really like a back and forth. But to really kind of mitigate the I feel you are being mean, that's not really the best I statement. You want to have, I feel this is my emotion. And you could say like, when you did blank, and not I feel hurt because you're being mean. You see the difference there, where it's like you're taking an action, like a behavior that they did, right? That
specific
is kind of
instance.
That if there was like a hidden camera, no one would argue that they did that behavior. So you could say like, yes, you did this behavior. Here's how I feel from that. It hurt me or whatever it was, and what I would prefer. And it's good to tell them what you would prefer. Because if you just say, I feel blank, they're like, okay, what do you want me to do with that? And you kind of like leave it up to them to really figure out what you mean and what you want. So if you say, I feel blank, here's what I would prefer, they have everything they need to make the relationship better. They know how their behavior and words impacted you. And two, they know what they can do that would make you feel better and that would make you value the relationship or have a stronger relationship. And if they really value that relationship, they will take that to heart. They will say, oh, wow, thank you so much for telling me. Like, I'm so glad you told me that. I'll really work hard to make those changes or whatever it is they're going to say. So that's like a really, really good place to start.
Wow. So powerful. Yeah. I love it. That was a good one. That was a really, really good one. Okay, cool. So any other really final takeaways that our audience gets to receive from this interview? I'm sure you have all, like, you can keep talking about this for a day. You got tons.
Get me all fired up. Yeah, I think the other thing I really wanted to send home was about boundaries are not about controlling or manipulating people. Again, because they're not about that. Boundaries are really about having healthy interactions with other people that work for you. You're not trying to punish anyone for setting a boundary. You're not trying to send them a message. You're really just taking this from you and saying, this is how I feel. This is what I would prefer. And maybe just backing up real quick, the steps of a boundary would be using your I statement, saying what you prefer, and then also the third step is saying what will happen if they don't respect that. So for an abusive relationship or someone that's not great, the consequence would be, I will not spend as much time with you. And that's not to punish them. That's not to send them a message. That's just really you taking care of you. That's really what a boundary is you taking care of you. And I don't want people to think it's about controlling or manipulating, because it's totally not. It's about you, and it's about your healthy interactions that you have with other people. And to kind of take that guilt away, I think when people use I statements or set boundaries or say no, it's that guilt factor. But if you're doing what's best for you, there really shouldn't be any guilt, because you're not doing anything wrong. Remember, guilt is like, I did something bad. Well, if you didn't do anything bad, if you taking care of you is your self-care, that's what you value, there is no reason to feel guilty for that. Like, feel empowered about that. Because you're telling yourself, like, yes, like, I matter. And that's huge. So.
Yeah, and I would also say to that, like, don't feel pressured to, like, get into that societal programming or expectations of how you should be around other people. Take care of yourself, manage your own space, your own energy, your own sanctuary of yourself, and really take care of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Sarah, this has been brilliant and beautiful, amazing, and so much fun, fired up. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So, tell us a little bit more about how people can stay connected with you and what you want them to do next.
Yeah, sure. So I have a free guide sheet online. 3 ways to say no without feeling guilty or bossy, which is so perfect. So you can find me at my website, which is www.theassertivewoman.com. Woman as in WOMAN, singular woman. And so you can download that. It's a great, free guide sheet. Just grab it. And then you can also find me on Facebook at The Assertive Woman page. And then I also have a Facebook group, which is super awesome. Like, there's only 50 people or so in there, but it is so engaged. Like, I love my group of women. It's awesome. They empower me, which is awesome. So there's a great Facebook group there. Check that out. And then also Pinterest at The Assertive Woman. I have 10 or 15 boards, anything from forgiveness like we had today to resilience to not being a perfectionist. There's goes into a little bit about codependency and how to not be that people-pleasing person that puts everyone else first. And then also, I just put out a new market survey. So if there's any women that are listening that have that can really identify with having low self-confidence and poor communication in their relationships, I would love to hear your opinion on my new survey. So you can find that in the group or private message me anytime. And we can get more connected, and
Awesome. Sarah, you're a superstar. Thank you for what you're doing for
Thank
women,
you so much.
helping them become their greatest possible self. This is just the beginning for you, and I'm excited to see you blossom as an influencer, as someone who's changing the world and empowering communities and countries and the world of women. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so fun. I'm so glad I got to do this and be on with you.
Yes. Awesome. Well, you have the best day ever. The best day ever.
Best day ever.
And we'll see you soon, okay?
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Awesome.
Bye.
See you, Sarah.